Hello, family. My name is James Trice, and I'm the creator of a podcast called YANA, or You Are Not Alone. You Are Not Alone is a podcast for Black men. It is more than just a podcast. It's a lifeline and a brotherhood. We're here to create a supportive, judgment-free space where Black men can have real, open conversations about what truly matters to us, from family and relationships to community, sports, culture, politics, faith, sex, race, education, and the challenges of everyday life. We dive deep into it all. Whether you're looking for advice, motivation, prayer, or just the comfort of knowing you're not walking this journey alone. YANA is here for you. This is your space to connect, grow, and be heard, because none of us are meant to do life alone. Look for new episodes weekly wherever you get your podcasts. And look for me on Instagram at jbtrice123. Welcome to YANA. Grace and peace, everyone. James Trice here again. Thank you for tuning into this edition, a new episode of YANA, You Are Not Alone, a space for Black men to talk uncensored in a judgment-free atmosphere about the issues that matter most to us. It's a space for us to walk this journey of life together because we're not meant to do life alone. So thank you again for joining us. Today's guest, we have Steve Floyd. I actually consider him my godson. I think I have learned as much from him as I have taught him as well. So I want to thank you, Stephen, for joining me on today's episode. So briefly introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are.
Well, first I want to say thank you for this opportunity and being a part of this. I will say that it's been a pleasure of watching this come from being a brainchild into watching the birthing process into seeing it being breathed life. I think it's very important and a very, very important platform for what is needed in today's society. About myself, so I am a true Minneapolis Southsider. Grew up on the South Side and attended Washburn High School, played football, did track, ended up graduating from Park Center High School back in 25 years now. So from there, went on to college, attended UW Stout for about 2 years before transferring back to Minnesota to Augsburg. I did about 2 years there before taking a break from the higher education aspect. I will say that my time at Augsburg and McAllister was great because I was at the time doing African American studies. So I was able to have some really great professors and some really great classes that kind of just opened my eyes to a lot of things during my time there. I served as the president for the PANU, Black Student Organization for Augsburg. After that, I tried the whole I'm going to work full time and then, pay for college. After about 8 or 9 months, close to a year, I kind of realized that it's a trap. You really don't go nowhere with things. And so I had to kind of come to a realization as how was I going to accelerate my life and put myself in the best way forward. My route ended up taking me going into the military. I did the Navy first for about 5 years before switching over to the Army. And then going into the Army, ended up going Special Forces. And so I've been a Green Beret at 10 Special Forces Group since 2014, I want to say. And so just been living life with that, married, got kids, 2 boys, and with my wife, she has 3 boys. So we have 5 boys total. So that's just kind of it in a nutshell.
As a Black man, what are you most passionate about? What brings you joy and satisfaction?
Kind of look at life and where I'm passionate about is that I look at it as a Black man, I am an ambassador for Black men, right? There's through my travels with the military and everything else, there has been a lot of instances where I've been the only Black person in a certain country or in a region. And it could be I am the only Black person that they may ever meet. So as an ambassador to Black men, it caused me to make sure that I was on my P's and Q's, so to say, to give them a very authentic, kind of representation of what it means, and that it's not the limited things that they may have seen in movies or television and certain portrayals of aspects, but there's a vast difference with it. I'll share a crazy story. At one point when I was doing a training, I was staying at an Airbnb and the host was a Nigerian woman. And so when I showed up for this, Airbnb stay for about a month, month and a half, I was going to be there. When I walked in the door, she was shocked and surprised. And the reason why she was shocked and surprised is because in my profile picture, I guess I was in the sun and she thought I was white from the profile picture. And she
Hmm.
had told me when I came in that she normally doesn't accept Black people. Like if she sees them, like yeah. And I was
Wow.
like, really? And she was just during that time of me being there, I was able to shape. She kind of came to me one day and she was like, wow. She was like, we would have conversations here and there. And she was like, wow. She was like, you know what? You have opened my eyes that there is more to Black people than what I've seen as an African woman saying this. She was impressed at what it was that I did, just the knowledge base that I was able to, how I handled myself, the topics of communication or conversation that I could hold, interest and knowledge base and things, and that I just wasn't some dumb Negro, slinging stuff on the thing. And it's like, yeah, no, there's a lot of us that are out there. You can't be closed minded to it, especially the fact that, we're part, we come from the same bloodline. It's a little different, but still the same, and so seeing that change with her and learning and understanding, because in her instance, it was that in Africa, growing up in Nigeria, they was taught white man is the way to go. White man, white man, white man. Like that's who got the money. They're the ones that got the power. That's who you want to be. And so she would only date white dudes because she was conditioned from Africa growing up that that's where you wanted. Black
Wow.
people, as African Americans, we weren't it were problems. It was this and that. But if you wanted money, you wanted success, you wanted all this other stuff. But then the crazy thing was that through her exploits of dating, she was just being used because of the fact that for them it was, hey, I got me a little something that's exotic. It's a
Hmm.
little wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And then they kept it moving. And then when they wanted to settle down, do all that other stuff, they weren't looking to her. They was looking to their own in doing that. So that was probably one of the so to answer your question, I would say just being an ambassador as a Black man and understanding all of everything that comes with that, with saying that it's a
Hmm.
heavy aspect of, to say that I'm a Black man. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of richness that comes with that, and being able to ensure that I'm, not only embodying that, but projecting that in the right format to different people, whether it's another Black person or somebody that's around the world, to giving them that great experience to help change that mindset so that they have a second thought that if any kind of stereotypical or whatever else comes into it, they're like, well, wait a minute, no, because I met in this one and it leaves a lasting impression.
What is the role that you believe Black men play in changing the perceptions and stereotypes America has of Black men?
All right. So the first part with the how Black men, the role that they could play. I think one of the key aspects is that it first starts with internally, and that individually we have to walk our own specific journey of healing, growth, and understanding. The more that we mentally allow, whether it's the stereotypes, the different how would I say this? The different hurdles that this country likes to kind of put in opposition that can wear you down, right? I feel a lot of Black men lose sight of their true heritage, and you have to make sure that you take the time to really research who you are. I think the part of the greatest aspect and the weapon that this country has been able to use when it comes to Black men is being able to strip you of your past, right? So the way that I kind of look at it is I view it as, think about it, if you had a child who was abducted at birth, right? Um, and they're raised by this, you know, these people who abducted this child, and then the child finds out later on that they were, and then the other old family kind of comes in. I feel like us as African Americans, we have a kind of love-hate relationship when it comes to with this country, because of the fact that we know the history aspect of what happened, over 400, 500 years ago. Um, and even though, yes, there's a lot of stuff that's wrong with it, it's also the only thing that we kind of know. For me, when I traveled back to Africa when I was 12 or 13, there was a lot of things that were eye-opening for me. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever seen a Black person on money, on fiat currency, and it threw me off. And I was like, wait, what is this? Right? Because I had only known this. So a lot of things were eye-opening and everything else, but I also saw in some instances, and I'm not going to say it's everything, but you do find a lot of opposition to where Africans aren't really 100% accepting of us, right? So we're kind of in this middle junks, as if you got the child who you have parents, your original parents, but you don't know them, you didn't grow up with them, and then you have the ones that have done wrong by you, but they've also kind of, I mean, you've made it to alive, right, to getting older. But now, depending on the circumstance, if it was a great upbringing or poor, right? Like you kind of find that. So I think when it comes to roles and stereotyping aspects, once you've identified and realized the king and who you are, you stop allowing yourself to be identified by those stereotypes. And then honestly, I actually, when I was thinking about preparation for this, one of the thought processes that I had when I was looking at some of the question aspects was that I look at what the LGBTQ community did when it came to television and movies. And it is something that honestly should be studied, because what they did was they went from being ostracized and shamed and things of that nature. And what they did was they first infiltrated the industry, Hollywood. They started getting people in there who were writers, who were directors, who were this and that, and they stayed low key for a while. They infiltrated various different levels. Then what they did is that, as a collective, they had an understanding that, so once they were enrolled, they started slowly introducing the idea, right, of LGBTQ character. But they all had the understanding that if you go back and look at this, if you put an LGBTQ character in any movie, TV show, or whatever, they had one rule: they could not be shown in a negative connotation. When you go back and look, the gays, the lesbians, they're always the fun friend that's kind of quirky, kind of everything else, right? You've never seen where they're like mean or, you know what I'm saying, like that bad side. They're always portrayed that way. And so for years, they've ushered in and conditioned that mindset of doing that, and they stood firm and didn't allow Hollywood to fight back to kind of do that. So we have to start taking how we want to be portrayed seriously, and we have to be united in, once we've identified that aspect and what that's going to be. And then if that means that, hey, unfortunately, like, all right, you want to cast this role, I'm not going to take that role. and every black actor and everything else has to be a part of that, to agree to that, that if nobody's going to be willing to jump on that grenade and then take that role, then those roles are slowly going to be rewritten because of the fact they can't be filled by it, right? And so that, I feel, as far as for the stereotype aspect of things, or if you're looking at shows and things that are putting us in a bad connotation, you got to stop supporting it. I mean, it's sad that when you look at our TV and movie histories, the movies and the aspects of the things that we find are the most blackest and that we identify the most with are the gangster movies. It's your boys in the hood. Now, granted, I get what John Singleton was trying to portray and show, and that was more so. But we bring in that the Minister Societies, all these hood movies. That's what we consider like our black cinema, right? And for this new age, I mean, and then in your guys' generation, a little bit before that, you had the black exploitation era of things, right? And I think we got to get past the point of just being satisfied with being on TV and start looking at, okay, what is the motivation behind? Because I'll tell you, with the whole, I guess, the woke woman, or whatever you want to call it, I'm looking at these corporations like Target, like Disney, and everything else right now. They're rewriting and changing these characters, and my thing is like, okay, well, what's the reason behind why? All right, it's cool. Yes, it's nice that you made Ariel black in The Little Mermaid, but why did you do that? Right? Like, was it because my thing is, instead of just trying to, I guess now, blackwash some cinema things and everything else, I would much rather you, instead of trying changing a character from white to black, I would much rather you invest the time and get the creative aspects and just write a brand new black character. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the lazy route, and it's kind of like, in order to avoid that, that's what they kind of do. And then we get appeased by it, and it tames us for a little bit longer, and it kicks that can down the road until we kind of rise back up again. And then they shovel us another little, hey, there's this.
So it never stops. They continue with it as a whole. Does that change their perception of us? I mean, because let's look at examples, right,
Yeah.
of successful black peoples. Let's look at successful black communities, right? Tulsa, right?
Mhm.
Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that were thriving black community that had their own communities where they had their doctors and their schools and their banks, and they were thriving, and
Right.
they were decimated, not just by a group of white angry mob, but essentially, I mean, bombs being dropped on them. Some believe were bombs that were dropped on them by the government.
Yeah.
And that's not the only community, but there's other communities that
Hmm.
are the same way, that have said, we're going to break out and we're going to get do our own thing. They were not criminals. They were not thugs. They were not gangsters. They were hardworking people who raised and built their own communities, thrived, and they were taken out because white society did not want to see that.
Hmm.
That even though they've done that, the perceptions about them still exist in America. So, but what
Um,
prevents them from doing another Tulsa to us?
it's a two-folded war aspect, right? You can't be so caught up on the perception of aspects of things that you don't build, that you don't grow, you don't do anything like that, because you're so
Right.
constantly worried about what you're perceived as doing.
That's
And then
right.
you also can't be so focused on building that you don't care about the perception aspects, because they go hand in hand.
That's
So
right.
what you have to do is, as you're building and everything else, you still have to affect perception, persona, to a degree, because the thing that we're seeing now, and where I think this is more powerful in a way that could actually help us, where it literally kind of gives us more of the power, versus back in the early 1800s, 1700s, with the use of technology and the ability to reach large masses and influence people, right? And the truth of the matter is that we've been programmed over the years and decades, especially with social media and the technology infusion, that honestly, what sucks is that it's people don't even really seek the truth anymore. It's about who can get the word out there first. And usually whoever gets the word out there first is the one that's going to win. because now you've influenced that perception, you've influenced that thought process, you've influenced those things. So that's why it is important that if we want to change those perceptions of things, we also have to build and have our own news platforms. We have to have all these things that can help aid in doing that. We're keeping the truth as with the truth. We're getting the word that's out there because we're self-sufficient and we're not government backed or things of that nature. It's going to be, I can't, I'm not going to sit there and say that like they can't take you down, but it's going to be a lot harder versus them just pulling the plug and taking
Exactly.
that, what you call it, right?
Right.
But then this is where we also have to be on our P's and Q's and ensuring we got to do the layers, right? It can't just be like, hey, we got the news aspects, but we got to make sure, hey, we got the lawyers, people and the stuff in place that when they do try and come, hey, we got that. We also have the judges and people and things in place because we're seeing that as Trump is trying to do certain things, even as much as he feels powerful in what he's doing, he's still being blockaded. One judge can sit there and be like, nope. And then that slows the process in doing that. So ensuring that we have levels of protection by having people put into various levels of local, national government, the judicial systems, and things of that nature. I don't think that one
Mm.
person can inflict it all, but I do know it is very hard, and I can't really think of any aspect where you can show me that change happened without the entity or the thing that was being changed was not first um penetrated or infiltrated by the changing authority. It's like the first
Mm.
step. So you got the first step is, and when I look at like with warfare, things that we do, right, and with special forces and looking at unconventional warfare, the first thing that we do is in setting up, and if you're looking at like a country that, let's say it's a country X that the government is not US friendly, but they're also tyrants to their people, and their people are kind of starting a civil war to overturn. We may be sent in and can go in. One of the first things that we're going to do is establish a shadow government, right? We're going to have the
Mm-hmm.
leadership aspects and things in place. So that way, because the truth of the matter is, it's, yeah, the fun part is getting the government regime toppled over. But if you don't have something already significant in place, that vacuum is going to create more chaos and more aspects of things. The other thing that we do is then we start affecting, it becomes a psychological warfare aspect with psyops and influencing the people. So how do you do that, right? You it could be that using sabotage or other methods and things that undermine the controlling government to where the people are losing trust in it. And then what we do is we come in as the saviors and restore. This is a lot of the stuff that you saw that Hamas actually did over in Gaza, and why for the in the Gaza Strip, you had a lot of locals who were, because Hamas was doing these tactics and things where they were being seen as the ones feeding the people, bringing them water, even though they were kind of behind the other aspects of it. But so it's that psychological aspect you start to wean off, because the thing is when you don't have the support for it, I don't care how big the government is, if you don't have the support for it, you're in trouble. So
Wow, see that man, you raising up a whole bunch of issues now. I mean, you were talking about imperialism, right?
yeah,
Where our government believes that it has the right to go into any nation, and because that nation may not agree with America's way of doing anything, of capitalism or whatever else, the government that's set up here, that's not, it doesn't operate in another government that's doing great, that's not oppressing its people, that America goes in and does set up this
well, I
puppet
won't say,
government.
okay, let
I
me
mean, let
clarify.
me just be clear. I mean, just be clear. I
Let
mean,
me
because
clarify.
some of that has been abused,
Yeah,
where they set
will,
up
I
government
can't.
and take over nations that, like,
Mhm.
you're invading nations and you're taking over nations that are doing right by their people because you want something there. So you talking about imperialism that.
That can happen, and I will say that, but for us to go in that nature, that we have what do you call it, permission. More so what ends up happening, other than that was like one aspect of it, more so what ends up happening is that we're actually ended up working with other countries governments, and we're helping to ensure that they're not being overthrown in that aspect. So it's a two-way aspect of things. But it's not so much that it's just like, hey, we see this conflict over here, we're just going to drop on in. And because number one, these people don't know us from Adam, and no matter what side you get caught up on, they'll just take you out because they don't know if they can trust you, if you're a spy, things of that nature. So a lot of those aspects of things, you have those relationships that are backdoor that have to be fostered into doing that. And if we can kind of see the writing on the wall in certain aspects of things, then we can kind of come in. So, in instance, like when you're looking at like what Ukraine and Russia, right? In that whole aspect and conflict of things, we were there for years prior to that, helping and training to prevent that. And that's one of the reasons why the Ukrainian didn't fold to Russia that way, because
Yeah, but Russia never should have been allowed to go in there. If America's
no,
in there supporting them, so why didn't America prevent? And so again, we're getting out of time here because
okay,
I do have to get into it. But this is getting into a bit. We have to talk
yeah,
more about this
it can
because
start go. Yeah, you can go deep into. I would say
so that
the whole big aspect. The reason why is because Ukraine is not a part of NATO.
right. Well, but again, Ukraine
And
never should have
so
been invaded by Russia,
right. So,
and that
but
should have
with the
been
laws, when you start getting into those types of cultural, custodial laws and things of that aspect of whatnot, the biggest thing is, and the reason why Putin did what he did was because his biggest thing is that number one, he wants to try and restore glory to the old Soviet bloc, right? So he wants to take back up. But what he also doesn't want is he doesn't want NATO country. He wants to have a buffer between Russia's border and NATO, right? And so you're dealing with these
Putin want to take
aspects of
over the
these two people.
world. That's what Putin wants to. He wants to control the
Yeah.
world,
So it's
right?
like,
And so he's
okay,
going to pick
like
on. Yeah, I mean,
right. And unfortunately it kind of he plays chess, and he saw that when how when the Democratic Party was in power back when Obama was in before he left office, is when he went in and he invaded Georgia, right? And took that over. Saw that there was no real repercussions, any things of that nature. Now, despite all what your thought process and things were dealing with Trump actually, because I think what it was that for a lot of people, we look at Putin and we go like, that man is unstable, right? He could do anything. He could hit the nuke button, nuke everybody, right? But then I think also too for them when Trump came in, it was like, okay, that dude is unstable. We have no playbook for him because he's not your traditional. So you saw a lot of China backing off. You saw Russia backing off. Then they waited until he was out. Then Biden was back in. Then they were kind of like, oh, okay. And then we're going to push the envelope a little bit and kind of see like, hey, are we going to get, and now we have where we are today. And as you're kind of seeing with that. So I think that a lot of that stuff and that aspect over there is kind of big. And, and certain parts when I have to be a part of it, than I am. But to answer your second question,
I don't know if we got time to get to it, but it's an
okay.
important
Well, I'll make
question.
yeah.
Make it,
One
yeah,
about
well,
like with serving in the
right, because
military
it
the
gets right
history.
into it. It's a great segue into
Yeah,
that second question, and how does a black man serve a country that does things like this to other countries, and particularly black and brown countries, where America has been known to go and invade and commit acts of imperialism and destabilize governments that are there for the people. Um,
yeah.
and so take a few minutes up
I'll do it
and
quick.
try to see,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
But
so
then
I
we got to reschedule because
we'll
I know
wrap
I
it.
have
That's
another one
fine.
coming up, another interview right after this. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I think the biggest aspect for it is that it kind of starts on an individual aspect in a certain calling and whatnot. I will not sit here and say that, oh man, I went into the military because of love of country and things of that nature, right? For me, it was a very personal aspect of like I need to get out of this trap. I need a way to accelerate my life. I need a different experience and something else. And at the time, my goal was I wanted to become a federal agent. And one of the requirements was either become a cop or go into the military. I was not going to be a police officer. So I chose the military. The military kind of opened my eyes to a lot of other aspects of things. And then what you'll see is that with those who are serving, even when we go off to war and other aspects, it has nothing to do with the president's policies or what this or that is all about. It all becomes about the individual and the man and woman that's on your left and your right, and protecting
Yeah,
each
but
other and keep
y'all
each
take
other.
orders from the man in government though.
We
He's the
do.
chief.
Yeah.
And he gives orders and he said, I want you to go into this.
And if
You
he
got to
wants us to
go
go
where
over
he says
there,
go.
we
And y'all got
go.
to do what he says do and carry out his orders. If you
That
don't
is
carry out
correct.
his orders in the military, you can't be in the military. So
That's correct.
you serve at the behest of the commander in chief.
That is true. But there's a lot. It's not as simplistic as he says this and then we got to go do it. There's a lot of checks and balances. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that aren't conveyed in movies and other
Wow.
aspects.
So when he sent people down to California, when he sent those troops down to California to control 100 people at the most.
So now you're talking about
Marines.
something different, right? So because now you're talking, that's not federal, that is state. Because now you're
No,
talking.
he sent Marines. Those are federal.
There's National
Marines
Guards.
down.
No. So every branch has like your active duty, who is federal. You have your reservists, right? And you have like your different National Guards that are state based and things of that nature. So depending on your status, so reservists fall under something different than what active duty. Do you get what I'm saying?
So they were Marine reservists.
Reservists that are coming in.
So they're not federal Marines. Marines are federal.
So no, so each one has a state in what you call it. So based on where you are, right? Because when you drill at your state, right? So if you're a reservist, you are at the behest of the state and federal, right? And most times, but they don't become federal until they deploy.
But the state didn't send them there. The president sends them there, and the president
he's over the federal. Under the what you call it. Yeah,
he overrode what the governor wanted in California.
Okay.
And sent
so
those,
yeah. So I mean,
and
that's where he can tap into, because once like reservists become deployed, deployed status, then that's when they fall under federal. So
he deployed troops into California.
Okay.
And right. So anyway, wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack here, man. Wow. I apologize. I would let this conversation go longer, but we have to come back to this for sure and talk more about this. I would love to unpack this more and more, and for people to understand this, right? Because you're in the military and you're a black man, you're there, and we would love to hear more about this. You're educating me on this, so I can understand more about this.
Yeah.
So we can understand this. So real quick, I do want to end with this. I want you to, if you could, what would you, as we end this conversation, what final word would you like to share with black men who are listening right now? What would you say to black men who are listening to us right now in your final words? And then again, we're gonna have you come back.
Right. I would say in the final words is the thing that I'm seeing as far as one of the biggest crises and aspects, right, is men really self-reflecting and taking ownership of actions and mental aspects and things. Recently started coaching, being like a life coach and relationship coach with black men and women. And the thing that I'm seeing the most is that a lot of men are, I would say, you're functioning while dysfunctional. And what it is that because you haven't taken that time to unpack your own personal aspects, right? It's more than you're just an angry black man, right? You have triggers. But if you don't sit down and really take that time to understand what are these triggers, what is setting it off, what is the origin of it, right? So that way you can start to rewire that aspect in your psychological and emotional behavior, you're going to continue down these tropes and just stay in this, systematic cycle. And only until you break that are you actually going to be able to start elevating and actually be an asset, not only to yourself, but to your family, to that legacy, to those other aspects of things. And so to me, I would say you gotta take that internal aspect and, look at it, and you got to be honest. It's a hard truth. It's very hard to do. But when you do, it gets you out of that survival mode and you can actually start to see how to live and to see all of your potential. Because when you're in survival mode, you're not worried about what your potential is, what you can do, what options and things that are out there. You're just stuck in survival. So I would tell Black men, take the time, sit back, reevaluate yourself, look at certain things, have honest conversations with trusted, other Black men that are your friends, family members that that are going to keep it real with you, but they're coming from a place of love. And you have to be willing to accept and hear what it is that they're saying, and then put in the work to make that internal change.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks. Stephen, we're going to have you come back. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, folks, again, another great show. And again, goes so quick. But you have been listening to YANA, a space for Black men. And I'm asking you to go to YouTube and like and subscribe to my page. We look forward to seeing you next time on YANA. And until then, remember, we're not meant to do life alone. Grace and peace, everyone. YANA is here for you. This is your space to connect, grow, and be heard, because none of us are meant to do life alone.